For 112 years, humanity held the galaxy at peace, honoring every treaty and restraint. Then the unthinkable happened. A hospital, full of the innocent, was destroyed by the Galactic Empire. That single act shattered centuries of patience. Earth did not negotiate. Earth did not warn. Earth went to war. And the galaxy learned in a single day the cost of underestimating humanity. The breaking point, the Mercy Station, hung in the void like a promise. Its white hull reflected the light of distant stars, and through its transparent sections, the soft glow of medical bays could be seen. This was humanity's gift to the galaxy. For 112 years, humans had chosen healing over warfare, medicine over military might. The station was a symbol of that choice. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck and watched a transport vessel approach. She was tired. The last 3 days had brought wave after wave of refugees, families fleeing from the Kraloth Dominion's expansion into the outer territories. The Kraloth were conquerors, and they showed no mercy to those who stood in their way. Sarah had been running Mercy Station for 8 years. In that time, she had treated thousands of patients from dozens of species. She had saved Thornian children with their crystalline skin. She had healed Velker warriors with their multiple hearts. She had even treated Kraloth soldiers who had been wounded in battle. The hospital accords were clear. Everyone deserved medical care, regardless of which side of a conflict they stood on. The transport docked and the new arrivals came aboard. Velker families mostly, with burns from plasma weapons. Elderly ones with expressions of deep shock. Young ones who cried for homes they would never see again. Sarah's team moved quickly. Nurses guided patients to beds. Doctors began assessments. Medical scanners hummed to life. This was what humans did now. This was what they had done for over a century. Sarah did not know that Kraloth warships were already closing in. She did not know that everything was about to change. The warning came from the station's sensor operator. His voice was shaking when he called Sarah to the command center. 3 Kraloth heavy cruisers had appeared on the edge of sensor range. They were approaching fast. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. Kraloth ships had visited before to collect their wounded. But something felt different this time. The communication channel opened. The voice that came through was cold and mechanical, filtered through a translation device. Human station, you are harboring enemies of the Kraloth Dominion. Surrender. All Velker refugees to us within 30 minutes or face destruction. Sarah's hands were steady as she took the microphone. This is Dr. Sarah Chen, Director of Mercy Station. Under the hospital accords signed by your government 40 years ago, this facility is neutral medical territory. We do not surrender patients. We protect them until they are healthy enough to leave on their own. The Kraloth commander's response was immediate. The Dominion no longer recognizes your accords. You have 30 minutes. Sarah looked at her staff. They were young. Most had never experienced violence. They had dedicated their lives to healing because that was what humanity stood for now. She thought about the 6,000 patients under her care. She thought about the Velker children in Ward 12 who were finally starting to smile again after weeks of nightmares. Then you will be disappointed, Sarah said quietly. We will never surrender our patients. She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. Begin emergency evacuation protocols. Move all patients to the intersections. Send distress signals to Earth and to every ship within range. And pray that help arrives in time. The 30 minutes passed in chaos. Medical staff ran through corridors carrying children. Hover beds moved critically ill patients to shielded areas. Some patients who could walk helped those who could not. A Velker warrior with bandages covering half his body carried 2 children on his back. Everyone understood what was coming. When the time expired, the Kraloth commander spoke one final time. You have made your choice, human. The Dominion will demonstrate what happens to those who defy us. The first energy beam struck the northern medical wing. The explosion tore through 5 levels of patient rooms. Fire and vacuum rushed through spaces where moments before doctors had been saving lives. The screams lasted only seconds before silence took over. Sarah was thrown against a wall. Blood ran down her face from above her eye. Through the shattered window of the command center, she watched the Kralith cruisers fire again and again. Each shot killed dozens. Each explosion destroyed years of hope. The station that had been a symbol of peace was being torn apart. Sarah crawled to her feet and ran toward the medical wings. She had to help someone. She had to save someone. That was all she knew. In Ward 12. She found the Velker children. The ceiling had collapsed. Small bodies lay motionless among broken beds and scattered medical equipment. A young nurse named David was kneeling among them, sobbing as he checked for pulses that were no longer there. Dr. Chun, he whispered. They killed them. They killed the children. Sarah held him as the station shuddered with another impact. She held him and felt something rising inside her that she had never felt before. Something cold and terrible. Rage. The attack continued for 80 minutes. When it ended, Mercy Station was a broken shell drifting in space. Of the 6,000 patients, fewer than 400 survived. Of the 900 human staff members, only 73 lived. The Kralith commander broadcast images of the destruction across the galaxy as a warning. This is what happens to those who harbor our enemies. Sarah was among the survivors. She floated in an escape pod with 14 others, watching debris scatter into the void. She had spent her entire adult life healing. She had believed that compassion was stronger than violence. She had been wrong. When rescue ships arrived hours later, they found her sitting in silence. A medic tried to treat her wounds, but she pushed him away. Her voice was empty of everything except cold purpose. Send a message to Earth. Tell them what happened here. Tell them the Kralith attacked a hospital. Tell them they killed our patients. Tell them they murdered children. The medic nodded and moved to the communication panel. Sarah looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Kralith Dominion was celebrating their victory. They thought they had taught humanity a lesson about power. They thought they had shown the galaxy what happened to those who defied them. They did not understand what they had awakened. They did not know that humanity had not always been healers. They did not know about the weapons sealed away beneath the lunar surface. They did not know about the 3 centuries of blood that had convinced humans to choose peace. They would learn. The galaxy would learn. Some species were peaceful because they were weak. Humanity was peaceful because they chose to be. And now that choice had been taken from them. For 112 years, humanity had been at peace. That peace ended the moment the first energy beam struck Mercy Station. What came next would remind the galaxy why humans had chosen to put away their weapons in the first place. And it would teach the Kralith Dominion the most terrible lesson of all. Never attack those who have chosen mercy. Because when they stop choosing it, nothing in the universe can save you. The awakening for 72 hours, Earth was silent. The galaxy watched and waited. News networks across 1,000 worlds showed the images of Mercy Station burning in space. Alien commentators discussed the tragedy. They called for diplomatic solutions. They expressed concern and offered sympathy. But no one acted. The Kralith Dominion had conquered 53 worlds in the last decade. No one wanted to be the 50-4th dot on Earth in the Grand Assembly of the United Terran Council. Representatives from every human nation gathered in emergency session. The chamber was circular, with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Above them, holographic displays showed the wreckage of Mercy Station. The faces of the dead scrolled past in endless columns. Dr. Sarah Chen, Nurse David Martinez. 400 patients whose only crime was seeking help. Chancellor Elena Vasquez stood at the central podium. She was 68 years old, with silver hair and eyes that had witnessed much in her lifetime. She had been a combat medic once, decades ago, before dedicating herself to politics and peace. She knew what war looked like. She had hoped never to see it again. My fellow humans, she began. Her voice echoed through the silent chamber. We are not here to mourn. There will be time for mourning when this is finished. We are here to remember something we've tried very hard to forget. She pressed a control and the images changed. Now they showed something older, something darker, scenes from human history. Cities reduced to ash, battlefields covered with bodies. Nuclear firestorms consuming entire continents. The Great War, humanity's darkest chapter. 300 years ago, humanity nearly destroyed itself. We fought wars that killed 8 billion people. We created weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. We developed military strategies so efficient that entire nations could be conquered in days. We were very good at war. Too good. The assembly watched in silence. These images were taught in schools, but seeing them now felt different. It felt like a warning of what might come again. When the Great War finally ended, when we looked at what we had done to ourselves, we made a choice. We sealed away our weapons. We closed the military academies. We dismantled the war fleets. We chose to become healers instead of killers. And for 112 years, we kept that promise. Chancellor Vasquez paused. Her hands gripped the podium edge. The Kralith Dominion has broken something today. Not just our hospital. Not just our people. They have broken the peace we built. They have reminded us of what we are capable of. Now we must decide what to do with that reminder. A representative from the Asian Federation stood. He was young, barely 30, someone who had never known anything but peace. Chancellor, surely we can resolve this through the Galactic Council. The Kralith violated the hospital accords. There are mechanisms for justice. The Galactic Council has done nothing. Vasquez's voice cut through his words like steel. They expressed concern. They called for dialogue. They did exactly what they always do when the Kralith attack someone. Nothing. Because they are afraid. She turned to face the full assembly. Beneath the lunar surface are vaults we sealed over a century ago. Inside those vaults are the weapons we promised never to use again. Ships that can appear and disappear without being detected. Weapons that bend the laws of physics. Soldiers trained in combat techniques, so devastating that we banned them from being taught. The chamber erupted in voices. Some representatives called for caution. Others demanded action. The noise grew until Vasquez raised her hand for silence. The Kralith think we are weak because we chose peace. They think healers cannot be warriors. They are about to learn how wrong they are. The question before this assembly is simple. Do we open the vaults? Do we remind the galaxy what humanity was before we chose to be different? The vote took 7 minutes. It was not unanimous. 30 representatives voted against military action. They argued for sanctions, for diplomacy, for patience. But 470 voted yes. The vaults would be opened. That night, a message went out across all human channels. 3 words that made every military historian in the galaxy scramble to understand their meaning. Awaken the fleet. On Luna, massive doors that had been sealed for generations began to open. Dust fell from ancient hinges. Lights flickered to life in hangar bays that had been dark for over a century. And ships began to wake. The Reaper-class dreadnoughts were first. Each vessel was 4 kilometers long, built from materials that could withstand temperatures hot enough to melt ordinary steel. They had been maintained by small crews of keepers, men and women who had spent their entire careers making sure the ships would function if they were ever needed again. Those keepers had prayed this day would never come. Now they prepared their vessels for war. In the asteroid belt, the Shadow-class carriers powered up their engines. Each carrier held 1,500 fighter craft. Each fighter was controlled by an artificial intelligence that could process information faster than any organic brain. These eye systems had been sleeping for 112 years. Now they woke and immediately began running combat simulations. On Mars, the old soldiers emerged from retirement. Men and women in their 80s and 90s, who had trained in the ancient ways before the Great Peace. They moved slowly now, but their minds were sharp. They remembered the tactics. They remembered the strategies. They remembered how to win wars quickly and completely. Admiral Marcus Rivera was 97 years old. He had been 19 when he completed his military training. Then the peace had come, and he had never fought a single battle. He had become an engineer instead, helping to build the medical stations that humanity sent across the galaxy. He had thought his combat knowledge would die with him. Unused and unnecessary, now he stood on the bridge of the Reaper-class dreadnought Absolute and watched his fleet assemble. 60 ships. It was a small force compared to the Kralith Dominion's thousands. But numbers had never been what mattered most in war. Strategy mattered. Technology mattered. The will to do whatever was necessary mattered. A young communications officer. She was 25 years old, part of the new generation who had lived their entire lives in peace. Her hands trembled as she held out a data pad. Admiral, we have received a transmission from the Kraloth ambassador. He demands to know what we are doing. He says the Dominion will not tolerate threats. Marcus looked at the data pad, then at the young officer. Tell the ambassador that humanity does not make threats. We make promises. And we always keep them. He turned to face the view screen. It showed the gathered fleet against the backdrop of space. These ships had been built to end wars. They had been designed by people who understood violence so completely that they had chosen to reject it. Now they would serve their original purpose one final time. Send a message to all ships, Marcus ordered. We leave for Kraloth space in 6 hours. Our mission is simple. Find their military forces. Destroy them. Do not harm civilians. Do not target non-military installations. We were going to war, but we are still human. We will remember that even when our enemies do not, across the solar system, the human fleet prepared for departure. Engineers ran final checks on weapon systems. Pilots reviewed combat protocols. Medical teams prepared trauma bays for casualties that might come. And on Earth, in a small apartment in Geneva, Dr. Sarah Chun watched the news broadcasts. She saw the ships assembling. She saw the old weapons being brought back into service. She knew what was coming. Part of her felt relief. The Kraloth would pay for what they had done. But another part of her felt only sadness. She had dedicated her life to healing because she believed it was the better path. She had believed that compassion could change the galaxy. The Kraloth had proven her wrong. Now humanity would prove something else. They would prove that healers could become warriors again when they had no other choice. And they would prove that mercy, once rejected, would not be offered twice. The fleet departed 6 hours later. 60 ships carrying humanity's fury toward Kraloth space. The galaxy watched and wondered what would happen next. They were about to find out. And they would never forget what they learned. The Kraloth 4th Battle Fleet was the pride of the Dominion. 1,000 warships commanded by Fleet Commander Zarketh, a veteran of 30 campaigns. He had conquered 12 worlds personally. His fleet had never lost a battle. They were considered invincible. Zarketh sat in his command throne aboard the flagship Eternal Conquest and watched the censor reports with amusement. The humans had sent 60 ships. 60 against 1,000? It was not even a challenge. It was an insult. They are brave, his tactical officer observed. Foolish, but brave. They are desperate, Zarketh replied. His voice was a deep rumble that echoed through the bridge. They know they cannot win. This is a gesture of defiance before they accept the inevitable. We will destroy them quickly and then proceed to Earth itself. The two fleets closed the distance. The Kraloth ships formed their standard attack formation, a wall of heavy cruisers at the front, carriers in the middle, command ships at the rear. It was the formation that had broken every enemy they had ever faced. The human ships did not form any recognizable pattern. They simply advanced in a loose cluster, as if formation did not matter to them. Zarketh clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. They did not even know proper military doctrine. This would be over in minutes. All ships, he commanded. Fire at will. 1,000 warships unleashed their weapons simultaneously. Energy beams, plasma missiles, kinetic projectiles. Enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. The space between the fleets filled with death, none of it connected. The human ships moved in ways that should have been impossible. They slipped between energy beams. They twisted away from missiles with precision that no organic pilot could achieve. They seemed to know where every shot would be before it was fired. In the time it took Zarketh to process what was happening, the human fleet had crossed half the distance without taking a single hit. What is this? He began to say, then the humans fired back. Zarketh had never seen weapons like these. beams of concentrated energy that did not just destroy matter but seemed to erase it from existence. One moment, a Kraloth cruiser would be there, solid and real. The next moment, there would be nothing. Not debris. Not wreckage. Just empty space where a ship had been. 200 Kraloth vessels vanished in the first minute. Zarketh screamed orders. His captains tried to respond, but the human ships were everywhere now, weaving through the Kraloth formation like predators through prey. Every time they fired, another ship disappeared. Every maneuver they made was perfect. Retreat, Zarkov commanded. All ships fall back and regroup, but there was no retreat. The human ships moved faster than the Kraloth sensors could track them. They appeared behind fleeing vessels and destroyed them. They fired with accuracy that was beyond anything Zarkov had ever encountered. This was not battle. This was extermination. A beam of darkness struck his flagship. The entire left side of the bridge vanished. Officers around him simply ceased to exist, leaving nothing behind. Zarketh fell from his command throne, his mind unable to comprehend what was happening. Impossible, he whispered. This cannot be happening. His tactical officer, or what remained of him, tried to speak. Commander, we have lost 700 ships. We must. Another beam hit. The tactical officer was gone. Zarketh looked at his command displays. Red indicators everywhere. Ships dying faster than the computer could register. The mighty Fourth Battle Fleet was being erased from existence. The battle lasted 14 minutes. When it ended, 1,000 Kraloth warships had been reduced to nothing. No survivors. No wreckage. Just empty space where a fleet had once been. Admiral Marcus Rivera sat in his command chair and watched the final sensor sweeps confirm what he already knew. Total victory. 0 human casualties. Not a single human ship had been damaged. He felt no satisfaction. Only a deep weariness that came from using knowledge he had hoped would never be needed. Send the message, he told his communications officer. The message went out on all frequencies. Every ship in the galaxy heard it. Every government, every news network, every being with a receiver. To the Kraloth Dominion, you attacked a medical facility. You killed healers and patients. You murdered children. We acknowledge that you do not recognize the sanctity of mercy. We will conduct ourselves accordingly. To all other civilizations, do not interfere. This is not your war. Remain clear of Kraloth space, and you will not be harmed. On 100 worlds. Beings of 100 species watched recordings of the battle. They watched 1,000 warships disappear in 14 minutes. They watched the human fleet move through space like nothing they had ever seen. Fear spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The campaign that followed lasted 31 days. The human fleet moved through Kraloth space like a surgical instrument, precise and devastating. They did not conquer worlds. They did not occupy territory. They simply found Kraloth military forces and removed them from existence. Fleet after fleet was destroyed. Station after station was dismantled. The Kraloth military machine, built over centuries of conquest, was taken apart piece by piece. By the end of the second week, the Dominion had lost 90% of its military capacity. But something unexpected happened on the conquered worlds. When human ground forces landed, they came with weapons ready, but fingers off triggers. They secured military installations and captured Kraloth soldiers, but they did not execute prisoners. They removed symbols of Dominion authority, but they did not harm civilians. And then the human medical teams arrived. They set up field hospitals in the ruins of Kraloth cities. They treated wounded Kraloth soldiers alongside liberated prisoners from conquered species. They gave food to hungry civilians. They provided medicine to the sick. A Kraloth mother hiding in her dwelling with her offspring watched through a crack in the door as a human soldier stopped in the street. A young Kraloth had fallen and injured its leg. The child was crying in distress. The soldier knelt down, pulled medical supplies from his pack, and carefully treated the wound. Then he gave the child a ration bar and continued his patrol. The mother did not understand. These were the humans who had destroyed 1,000 warships in minutes. These were the warriors who had dismantled the Dominion's military in weeks. Why were they helping her child? A human medic found her family later that day. The mother expected death. Instead, the medic examined her offspring, provided vitamins and clean water, and left supplies for the family. Why? The mother finally asked. Why you help us? We attacked your hospital. We killed your people. The medic, a woman with tired eyes and gentle hands, paused at the entrance. Your leaders did that? Your military did that. You and your children are not your leaders. We did not come here for revenge. We came to make sure this never happens again. Stories like this spread across the conquered worlds. The humans were terrifying in battle, but compassionate in victory. They destroyed fleets without mercy, but treated wounded enemies with care. It made no sense to anyone watching. On the 28th day of the campaign, the human fleet arrived at Kralith Prime. 100 ships took position in orbit around the Dominion homeworld. Below them, 40 billion Kralith civilians looked at the sky and waited for their world to burn. Admiral Marcus Rivera stood on the bridge of the Absolute and looked at the planet below. One command, and he could turn it into a lifeless rock. Every death at Mercy Station would be avenged 1 billion times over. He thought about Dr. Sarah Chun. He thought about the children in Ward 12. He thought about everything the Kralith had destroyed. Then, he thought about what Dr. Chen had dedicated her life to: healing, mercy, the belief that compassion mattered more than vengeance. Opened a channel to the Dominion High Command. He ordered. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to Supreme Leader Vorthok. The Kralith looked defeated. His carapace was dull. His eyes held only despair. Human Admiral, he said, have you come to destroy us? We could, Marcus replied. Every person in this fleet wants to. Your forces killed our doctors. They killed our patients. They murdered children who were already suffering. He paused. But we will not destroy your world, because that would make us what you thought we were. Then what do you demand? Unconditional surrender. Your remaining military forces will stand down immediately. Your war leaders will face trial for crimes against the hospital accords. Your government will sign new agreements guaranteeing the protection of medical facilities. And you will personally broadcast an apology to the galaxy for what you did. Vorthok stared at him. And if I refuse? Marcus's eyes were cold. We have the power to glass your world. We have the power to eliminate your species from the galaxy entirely. Do not make us prove it. For a long moment, there was silence. Then Vorthok lowered his head in submission. I surrender. The Dominion surrenders. The war crimes tribunals were held 3 months later on neutral ground. Representatives from every major species came to watch. They expected executions. The Kralith had killed over 4,000 people in a deliberate attack on a medical facility. By galactic law, this warranted death. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in the front row of witnesses. The wounds on her body had healed, but the scars remained. She watched as the Kralith officers who had ordered the attack on Mercy Station were brought before the tribunal. When the time came for sentencing, Chancellor Elena Vasquez addressed the court. Humanity abolished capital punishment 2 centuries ago. We did this because we learned that killing, even as punishment, damages those who do it. We will not resume the practice now, no matter how much the guilty deserve to die. The gallery stirred with confusion. However, Vasquez continued, mercy is not weakness. These individuals will spend the rest of their lives working in human hospitals. They will clean floors. They will carry supplies. They will watch human doctors save lives every day, including Kralith lives. They will learn what they tried to destroy. Sarah Chun stood. The gallery fell silent. Everyone knew who she was. I wanted you to die, she said quietly, looking at the Kralith prisoners. For months I dreamed of your death. But if I demand that, I become less than what I was. She paused. You will work in our hospitals. You will see us save Kralith patients. You will see us treat your people with the same care we give everyone. And maybe you will understand why what you did was so terrible. 3 months after the tribunals, a new document was signed. The St. Sarah Accords, named after the doctor who had survived the attack. Every major power in the galaxy agreed to it. The document was simple. Any attack on a medical facility by any power will be considered an act of war against humanity. Response will be immediate and absolute. No one objected. They had all seen what happened when humanity chose to fight. On Earth, the vaults were sealed once more. The ships returned to their hangar bays. The old soldiers went home to their families. Admiral Marcus Rivera stood in the garden and watched the sunset. A young alien diplomat approached him, a being from one of the species the Kraloth had conquered. "Why did you go back to peace?" she asked. "You could rule the galaxy now. Your weapons are beyond anything we have." Marcus was quiet for a long time. "Humans are very good at war," he finally said. "That is our curse. We think faster, adapt better, fight more fiercely than most species." He looked at his hands. "We chose peace because we were terrified of ourselves. Every day, every human struggles against the part that wants to dominate and conquer. We call it the old hunger." The diplomat thought about this. "But the Kralith made you break your peace." "Yes," Marcus said heavily. "And now we have to make the choice again. To put away the weapons and go back to being healers. It is harder this time because we remember how easy the fighting was." He stood and looked at the stars. "The galaxy sees our hospitals and thinks we are gentle. We are not gentle. We are the most dangerous species in existence, and every single day we choose not to be. That is what makes us human." The diplomat stood beside him. "Your peace is not weakness. It is strength." Marcus nodded. The Kralith forgot that. They thought because we chose mercy we were incapable of anything else. He turned to walk home. "I hope no one is ever foolish enough to test us again. But if they do, we will be ready. We will always be ready. And we will never enjoy it." He stepped inside and closed the door. The diplomat stood alone in the garden, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, human hospitals were healing the wounded. Human doctors were saving lives. And human ships patrolled the borders, keeping the peace they had fought so hard to restore. She understood now. Humanity was not the gentle healer the galaxy had believed. They were something far more complex. A species constantly choosing kindness over cruelty, peace over power, healing over harm. And as long as they kept making that choice, the galaxy was safe. But if anyone ever made them stop choosing, if anyone ever reminded them of what they could become, she shivered. Some lessons only needed to be taught once. The galaxy would remember this one forever,